This week on Realist History, we'll be talking about the Spanish-American War. Okay. This is the war that officially made the United States of America an imperialist power. It's also a war that was based on a fucking lie. Okay? So let's lock in. You need to know about this one. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I am your homeboy first, and this is the realest, most entertaining show in the game. Put it on something. Again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share button, put all your folk on it. You understand me? Also, make sure you watch plenty more videos on the channel, especially Realist History. Okay. Also, feel free to join the channel. Okay, become a channel member so you can enjoy all the rights and privileges of any other member. You feel me? But let's go ahead and get into this shit. We ain't gonna waste no time. Too much shit going on to waste time. Okay, we got to get this knowledge up in us. All right, so let's get to it. All right. So we're going to explain the causes of the Spanish-American War, identify the major battles of the war, and describe the consequences of the war, including the debate over imperialism. Okay, and remember that term imperialism, when strong countries take over weaker countries. All right, let's go. All right, these are some terms and people from this section that we'll be seeing. All right, first, Jose Marti, Cuban patriot who launched a war for independence from Spain in 1895. William Randolph Hearst, owner of the New York Journal, who, along with Joseph Pulitzer of the New York World, started the Yellow Press. The Yellow Press sensationalized and exaggerated reporting on Spanish atrocities in Cuba. Jingoism, aggressive nationalism. George Dewey, Commodore of the U.S. squadron that destroyed the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay. Emilio Aguinaldo, leader of Filipino nationalists who defeated the Spanish army. Rough Riders, volunteer cavalry unit assembled by Theodore Roosevelt, famous for their 1898 charge at San Juan Hill. And Treaty of Paris, which ended the Spanish-American War and included U.S. acquisition of Puerto Rico and the purchase of the Philippines. All right, so our big question is, what were the causes and effects of the Spanish-American War? All right, it says, American economic interests, the growth of a national imperialist spirit, and an aggressive yellow press brought the United States to the brink of war in 1898. The United States acquired colonies. It became a world power as a result of the Spanish-American War. All right, let's get into it, y'all. All right, it says in 1897, Spain was in decline as an imperialist power. Its remaining possessions included Puerto Rico and Cuba in the Caribbean Sea and the Philippine Islands in the Pacific. Okay, now, if you missed my first segment within this chapter on imperialism, make sure you go back and watch that. Okay, again, imperialism, strong countries taking over weak countries. We know that from the 1500s through the early 1900s, you had European imperialistic powers going around the world taking over shit. Okay, and Spain was one of those ones. All right, motherfuckers ain't just speaking Spanish all over here and shit in Mexico and in Cuba and all these other various places throughout Central America and South America for no reason. Spain had a lot of control over a lot of shit. Manny Pacquiao ain't speaking Spanish for no reason. You feel me? Them motherfuckers went around the world taking over a lot of shit as well. Okay, I know people think about England most of the time, but and England probably did it the best. But these damn Spaniards, they were on one too. But by the late 1800s, them motherfuckers were on the downside. Okay? They're on the downside. And so you got some people in America looking at them, and while America's going like this, you know what I'm saying? This is like, 30 years after the Civil War. So, you reconstructed the country, you know what I'm talking about? You got this industrialization going on. You know what I'm talking about? You got urbanization going on. You got these cities popping up and shit. You know what I'm talking about? America getting to some money, and so now motherfuckers want to get to some power, and they kind of looking at Spain like, oh yeah, motherfucker weak. They looking at Spain like they a mark. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, in 1895, Cuban patriot Jose Marti launched a war for independence from Spain. Spanish general Valeriano Weyler was brutal in his attempts to stop Marti's guerrilla attacks. Tens of thousands of rural farmers died of disease and in Tens of thousands of rural farmers died of disease and starvation in concentration camps. The sympathetic Yellow Press published emotional headlines in the U.S. about Spanish atrocities. Okay, so here you have a freedom fight. Okay, yeah, you got these folks, these European powers going around the world colonizing shit, but that doesn't mean that those people wanted to be colonized. You feel me? So you got this Cuban patriot Jose Marti trying to lead his people to freedom. And look at what the Spanish did to these folks. So usually when you only hear about concentration camps, you just be thinking about Hitler in Germany. No. You feel me? That shit has happened in other times. You understand? And so what did the Yellow Press do in America? Try to make some money off of it. Put it in them damn newspapers. Okay? Ain't no internet. Okay? Ain't no TV. Ain't no radio. But it's still messier than a motherfucker. All right? They said we can make some money off this. Let's shit. Put some emotional headlines about what these Spaniards down here doing. All right? Let's go. American emotions were inflamed by Joseph Pulitzer's New York World and William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal. In response, President McKinley warned Spain to make peace and sent the battleship Maine to Havana Harbor to protect American citizens. When Hearst published a letter stolen from the Spanish ambassador that insulted President McKinley, American jingoism rose to a fever pitch. Now, let me remind y'all what these motherfuckers look like. Okay. Let's take a look-see at these sensationalists, William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer. Let's see, these boys got stupid, stanky rich off, sensationalism in the same way that these motherfuckers today be getting money on this internet and on Fox News and on these podcasts, you know what I'm talking about, being sensationalistic and shit. All right, so that's William Randolph Hearst right there. And show y'all his competitor. Okay. And you still have corporations named after these motherfuckers too, by the way. Okay. Well, at least you got the Hearst Corporation, and you have a prize named after Pulitzer. You know what I'm saying? Joseph Pulitzer. But these motherfuckers, a lot of shit they did was messier than a bitch. You know what I'm saying? And they were making that money. All right, so these were the two leaders of the Yellow Press, the sensationalistic newspapers. Okay. And while I'm at it, let's look at William McKinley. All right. Who's going to be the president of the United States from 1897 to 1901. Now, he actually got elected again. He should have served 2 terms, but he got assassinated. We talked about that previously. All right. Again, there's William McKinley, again, Republican president from 1897 to 1901. All right, so let's go back here. All right. So, Pulitzer and Hearst, they were inflaming this shit. You know what I'm talking about? They like, shit, man, we gonna make some money off this with these headlines. You know what I'm saying? And then they really took it to a whole nother level. You know what I'm talking about? When Hearst published that letter stolen from the ambassador, the Spanish ambassador that was dissing McKinley. So that made Americans like, hold the fuck on, hold on. You gonna talk about our president like that, man? Fuck Spain. You feel me? And see, as it says, McKinley sent the battleship Maine down there to Havana. Havana is in Cuba, okay? To Havana to protect American citizens and American interests. You know, you had a lot of American business people who had interests in Cuba. You know what I'm talking about? Cuba is very good for growing shit like tobacco and other things. You know what I'm talking about? So that's why he sent the ship down there. All right. So you see all this shit getting stirred up. Y'all already got America looking at Spain like a mark, like, oh, them bitches about to fall off. You know what I'm talking about? If we ever do get in the war with them, we can knock them off and take their shit. You know what I'm talking about? Also, you got Spain, you know, going at it with those Cubans who wanted freedom, and they were doing some fucked up shit to them folk down there. You know what I'm talking about? The Spaniards were, that is. Then you got the yellow press that's hyping all the shit up. You know what I'm saying? Then you got a McKinley sending one of our battleships down there, and you got this letter dissing our President McKinley. A lot of shit going on, y'all. All right. And then this happens. On February 15th, 1898, the Maine exploded, killing 266 Americans. The yellow press demanded war. Headlines screamed, "Remember the Maine!" A naval board of inquiry blamed a mine for the explosion, like the Spanish had put a mine there. In response, Spain agreed to American demands, including an end to the concentration camps. Despite Spanish concessions, President McKinley sought permission from Congress, that is, to use force. Now, let's stop right there for a second. Let's stop right there for a second. Of course, y'all know Congress gonna give him permission. I know that's a crazy thing to think about because you know these presidents today they don't give a fuck. They just got them go killing motherfuckers without congressional approval. But you know, once upon a time there was a thing where Congress had to, you know, give you a declaration of war. But this was all based on bullshit, y'all. That naval board of inquiry, all bullshit. Didn't no damn Spanish mine blow up that goddamn ship. Let me read something to you. And this comes from a book that I highly recommend to all of you called Presidents of War. I highly, highly recommend this book to y'all. Read this book. It gives you a lot of game on how we ended up in many of our fucking wars, y'all. Okay? So look at what the truth is about this goddamn ship blowing up. It reads, in 1911, after the Army Corps of Engineers pulled the wreckage out of Havana Harbor, a new naval court of inquiry argued that the Maine's explosion could be explained by the action of gases of low explosives, such as the black and brown powders with which the forward magazines were stored. In 1974, a study led by Admiral Hyman Rickover, father of the nuclear navy, suggested that the Maine exploded and sank because its coal bunker blew up, igniting its magazines. A 1998 study commissioned by the National Geographic Society using a computer model concluded that if a mine sank the Maine, it would have had to be perfectly placed, which would have been a matter of luck, and that a coal fire could have been the first step in the Maine's destruction. Listen to this now. As time went on, the sinking of the Maine became shorthand for a disaster that would quickly unite Americans in support for a retaliatory military attack on another country. So once other motherfuckers saw that shit worked back in 1898, they were like, oh, maybe we should try this shit again. And 1898 wasn't the first time it happened. Now, this is outside the purview of this class. I'm teaching y'all 1877 to the present, you know, to my U.S. history, 1877 to the present. But if you go before that, it's talking about another instance where we got lied into a fucking war. Okay, see, look at this. It says, just as the Thornton affair had generated immediate passion for James Polk to start a war against Mexico, the Mexican-American War, because motherfuckers wanted to go to war in Mexico just because they wanted to take their shit. And they were successful. Okay? Give you a little preview of something we're going to talk about later. It says, during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, President John Kennedy and his brother Robert, his attorney general, considered scenarios that might win public support for the U.S. military to bomb and invade Fidel Castro's Cuba, after which it could destroy nuclear-capable missiles that had been secretly slipped onto the island by the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. As the president's hidden tape machine recorded their voices, Robert told his brother that perhaps they should find some ship and, sink the main again or something. Come on, that dog. Come on, that man. Look, I'm your homeboy first. Y'all already know I'm gonna keep it all the way the fuck real with you. The excerpts from that book I just read to you, that book was written by a historian. You feel me? Again, I highly recommend that book. Let me give y'all the author of the book, Michael Beschloss. Read that whole motherfucking book. Okay? I did. Read it and get the truth. Because see, if these motherfuckers did this shit once, they'll do it again. And not only in war, they'll do it all in other situations as well. I know one of the buzzwords, one of people's favorite words now is gaslighting folks. Motherfuckers manipulating you. Now just keep 100. Then keep it plain. Make it plain. Motherfuckers try to manipulate you. And you gonna let them. It ain't got to be that way. Get educated. Think critically. Ask questions. Push back. They cannot fight these fucking wars without working men and women. They can't do it. It ain't enough rich people to go out there and do it. And you know goddamn well they ain't going out there and risk their lives and risk their millions and billions. Some of them want to be adventurous and go do the shit. Most ain't. That'd be people from struggle that be so patriotic and shit and be feeling like, hey, what the hell I got to lose? That'd be people from struggle. Don't let these motherfuckers manipulate your ass to a war or a civil war. Let's go. In April 1898, following a heated debate, Congress agreed to McKinley's request. Critics charged that the real goal was an American takeover of Cuba. As a result, the Teller Amendment was added, stipulating that the U.S. would not annex Cuba. The U.S. Navy was sent to blockade Cuban ports. President McKinley called for 100,000 volunteers. Now, when it says the Teller Amendment, it's not talking about a fucking amendment to the Constitution, like the First Amendment, Second Amendment, all that kind of shit. It's not talking about that. It's talking about an amendment to this war declaration and shit. This motherfucker Teller wanted to make sure that he specified that something was in there saying the United States cannot take over Cuba. Okay, you did have some people who were anti-imperialists, some people who thought that it was hypocritical of a country that's supposedly based on freedom to go take other motherfuckers' freedom. Some people thought that. Also, there were some who didn't want a place like Cuba to be a part of America, with these blacks and these Hispanics and all that shit. A lot of them didn't want that. So for a myriad of reasons, a lot of motherfuckers did not want America to take over Cuba. Okay. But at the end of the day, they did give McKinley the war declaration that he wanted. All right, let's go. In response to the American actions, Spain declared war on the U.S. The war began with U.S. victories in the Philippines. Commodore George Dewey surprised and easily defeated a Spanish fleet at Manila Bay. Rather than surrender to the Filipino independence fighters led by Emilio Aguinaldo, Spanish troops surrendered to U.S. forces. We'll talk more about Emilio Aguinaldo later. Okay, got some shit that's gonna blow your mind. Okay, just remember that we were on Cub's side at first, fighting against the fighting against the Spanish. Okay, keep that in mind for later on. All right, let's go. U.S. troops easily defeated the Spanish in Cuba. Guantanamo Bay was captured. You've heard of that before. We'll talk a lot more about that much later on in the course. Okay. Theodore Roosevelt's Rough Riders and 2 regiments of African American soldiers stormed San Juan Hill. A Spanish fleet was destroyed at Santiago. Spanish troops surrendered in Cuba and on the island of Puerto Rico. All right, let's talk about Teddy Roosevelt and these goddamn Rough Riders, okay? Because that this war is gonna add to the lore of Theodore Roosevelt, okay? Because he wasn't even goddamn president yet. You know what I'm saying? Once William McKinley gets killed, Teddy Roosevelt would become president. But remember, this war happened in 1898. Theodore Roosevelt didn't become president until 1901 after William McKinley's assassination. Okay, so in the Spanish-American War, Teddy Roosevelt quit his job, and took his ass out there to fight. Now I just said most of the rich folks ain't gonna go fight, but see, this is a different kind of war. First of all, it's a different kind of war. You ain't got no goddamn machine guns yet. You ain't got all these goddamn bombers and drones and all that kind of shit. Okay, war wasn't fully mechanized yet. Okay, so a lot of folks still view war as like some glorious thing and all that kind of shit. And Teddy Roosevelt one of them cats. Now maybe he would have done the same thing in a fully mechanized war. I don't know, but I just know at that time it wasn't like that. And he did take his ass on out there. And so this is him. Y'all see him dead center there. To my trying to look gangster and shit. Remember, he was a filthy rich motherfucker now. All right, stupid, stinking rich. But that's not his image. Like people don't be thinking about him like that. They think about rough Teddy Roosevelt. You know what I'm talking about? And some of that mystique came from his service in the Spanish American War with the Rough Riders. So there he is in one picture with them. Here's another picture that kind of added to his lore and his fame and shit that came off of this war. You know what I'm talking about? And it's just like the streets, y'all, just like common sense. Somebody get to fighting. Y'all think back to when you were in high school, you know what I'm talking about? Somebody got to fighting and they put some hands on somebody. They really that damn threw them hands. You know what's gonna happen to their rank in the school? It's gonna go up. They're gonna get more rank, they're gonna have more juice. You know what I'm talking about? So it's the same thing. We won this war. This man fought in the war. Pictures like this were disseminated in these newspapers, and so that helped his image and shit. And it's gonna help him, when he actually does become president as well. Okay. In the Treaty of Paris, Spain gave up control of Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Guam. Spain sold the Philippines to the U.S. for $20 million. Okay, again, that's a fucking lick. That's a lick now. That's a lick. I know it sounds like a lot of money. Back then, and this damn show sounded like a lot of money. But for a fucking country, no, that's a lick. Guam and Puerto Rico became American territories. Still are. Under the Teller Amendment, Cuba could not be annexed by the United States. So look at that, y'all. America's now an empire. Now, we no longer have control of the Philippines, but we'll talk a lot more about our occupation of the Philippines in the coming weeks. Okay? Keep that in mind. But we still do control Guam and Puerto Rico, and you got a lot of folks in Puerto Rico who want to be a state. Like they still a fucking territory, so they still underneath America, but don't have the full rights and privileges of all the other states and shit. You know what I'm saying? Now, I'm sure there are people in Guam that feel the same way, but I know motherfuckers in Puerto Rico be feeling like that. We be seeing them often on social media say these things. You know what I'm saying? And again, you see that the United States didn't annex Cuba, but what they did to Cuba was they made Cuba a protectorate. And again, that's something else we'll talk about in the coming weeks. Okay, let's go. While Secretary of State John Hay called it a splendid little war, debate soon arose over the Philippines and U.S. imperialism. Critics like William Jennings Bryan and Mark Twain attacked imperialism as against American principles. President McKinley argued that the U.S. had a responsibility to quote unquote uplift and civilize the Filipino people. Well, ain't that shit racist than a motherfucker? Woo! However, the U.S. brutally suppressed the Filipino rebellion. So think about it now. We were just fighting alongside these motherfuckers to help them get free from Spain. And they were thinking, oh shit, we free. You know what I'm talking about? We beat Spain. And turned out, oh, now you finna be under the US. Ain't that a bitch? And McKinley said we needed to do that shit because we had to uplift and civilize the Filipino people. Boy, them motherfucker race. Racism, social Darwinism, justifying taking over people's shit. Come on, man. And don't think that William Jennings Bryan wasn't racist. Now, I didn't talk to y'all about his motherfucking ass previously. If you missed that section that we talked about populism and shit, make sure you go watch that. All right, let's go. In February 1899, the U.S. Senate ratified the Treaty of Paris by just one vote. In the election of 1900, McKinley faced Bryan for the presidency. McKinley chose Theodore Roosevelt, the hero of San Juan Hill, as his running mate. McKinley and Roosevelt won easily. The United States now had an empire and a new stature in world affairs. Okay. Now, when it comes to a treaty, y'all, a treaty can be negotiated by the executive branch, but a treaty has to be ratified, accepted, approved by the United States Senate. Okay. At least that's how it used to go. I don't know how it's gonna go in Trump's America. So like the whole goddamn Constitution getting thrown out. But that's how it's supposed to go, y'all. Okay. And so you see, it was ratified by one vote. But it had massive consequences. Okay. The United States became an empire. And we will talk more about that empire in weeks to come. All right, so we knocked out another one. Let's just go back over our terms and people real quick. So we talked about Jose Marti. He was a Cuban who wanted fucking freedom from them Spanish folks. You know what I'm talking about? He was fighting for his independence. All right, that's who Jose Marti was. We talked about William Randolph Hearst and goddamn Joseph Pulitzer, who were sensationalistic newspaper owners, yellow press, stirring up all this shit to make money. You know what I'm talking about? Putting shit out there in these newspapers to really jazz people up and stir up shit to get that Spanish-American War going, because as my brother told me about the media, they say if it bleeds, it leads. So if they can get a war going, they can make some good money. All right. Yellow press, again, they're talking about these sensationalistic papers and shit. You know what I'm talking about? They not only sensationalize this war, okay? They sensationalize all kind of shit in American society, just like Fox News does today, just like social media does today, all that kind of shit. They just want to make some money. All right, jingoism, which that's just aggressive nationalism, okay? And we saw a rise in that during the Spanish-American War, but even preceding the Spanish-American War, when folks felt like William McKinley was being dissed by that Spanish ambassador in that letter. You feel me? George Dewey, just one of these military folks who destroyed the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay. Okay, I'm sure military historians know a lot more about that motherfucker right there. Emilio Aguinaldo, who was the leader of the Filipino nationalists. So just like Jose Marti was fighting for Cuban independence, you had Emilio Aguinaldo fighting for Filipino independence from the Spanish. Again, we're going to talk more about him a little later. All right. The Rough Riders, that was a volunteer cavalry unit in the Spanish-American War, very famous unit throughout military history. Part of their fame is because they had a future president among their ranks, and that would be Theodore Roosevelt. All right, in the treaty, and of course, they charged up San Juan Hill. All right, and the Treaty of Paris, that was the treaty that officially ended the Spanish-American War, and that shit led to the U.S. acquisition of Puerto Rico, Guam, the purchase of the Philippines, but not the annexation of Cuba. Okay, we'll talk more about Cuba being an American protectorate later All right, so that knocks out another edition of Realist History. Hope y'all enjoyed it. And please go watch more. Okay? Please go watch more. We have to educate ourselves. We have to educate our children in order to fight back against this fucking fascist wannabe dictator called Donald Trump. Okay? We must do that. All right. And I'm going to continue to do my part here. You do your part in whatever way you can do your part. Okay? But again, appreciate y'all for holding it down with me here on the Realest, most entertaining show in the game. Put it on something. I appreciate you watching. I think you'll enjoy these other videos too. So check them out now.